Welcome back to Q Dads, guys. It's me, Ben, and yes, episode 7 of Foundation Season 2 Rewatch. As always, no book spoilers, guys, and you know what? Let's just dive in. So this episode essentially opens up with a conversation around the future marriage of Queen Sereth, which is where Day and Demoiselle have a bit of a conversation, and Demoiselle is keen to prevent this marriage from happening. But ultimately, Day is very stuck to his ways and wants to end the genetic dynasty and have her rule from the sidelines. And then Demoiselle is confronted by Sereth, who ultimately talks openly about the fact that she is a robot, which Demoiselle does not like, and escorts her to go get checked out by the doctors. And on the way there, she mentions that she only serves Empire, basically hinting that Queen Sereth is absolutely worth nothing to them, and it's all about the longevity of the Cleonic dynasty. But of course, she does get a little bit too cocky, and as the doctors are inspecting her, this then forces Demoiselle to have a bit of a very honest and private yet open conversation about the fact that they did have an involvement within Sereth's family dying, and threatens her very existence if she essentially doesn't comply. He then forces her later on to confront Day, and actually for a quick moment I saw a glimpse of that soul that he was trying to get to in the first season, and Sereth tries to talk to him about her whole family and connects them to the offspring that they're potentially going to be having in the future. But of course, Day is having none of it and quickly shuts her down. And this leads Sereth to consoling in Dawn, and where we get to see some very clever technology, which of course is the facial scramblers. And then again, at the end of season 2, we also see them trying to trick Demoiselle. But yes, ultimately they get it on. And in this moment, I've got to think about it. Although Dawn and Sereth are trying to conceive a child, behind Day's back, actually, because they're genetic clones, isn't that baby going to be exactly the same? So does it really matter whether it's Day, Dawn, or even Dusk for that matter? That baby is still going to be exactly the same, minus probably a minuscule amount of DNA. Now, in this episode on Ignis, we get to see Gale. And Gale and Sal are talking, and it's getting a little bit heated with each other. And now what Sal can't see here is the bigger picture, with Gale, who is obviously doing everything in her power to prevent Tellum from getting inside and figuring out where the Prime Radiant is. But something just doesn't quite sit right. And obviously when Sal flips her coin and it lands on the Bishop's Claw, otherwise known as cats, and she couldn't actually predict whether it was going to be crowns or cats. And I believe that this means essentially something was off. And then later on you start to notice some of the subtle details. So when Gale is telling a conversation to the rest of the people on Ignis, and she's openly talking about the mule, for a split second Tellum looks at a few of the others and gives a slight eye movement, as if she's controlling them. Similar to that in the end of the episode, when we get to see the guy with the tear coming down his face. And of course, this does foreshadow the events in the final episode of this season, which I'll touch on in a couple of videos' time. But yes, here you can notice those details, that subtle mind control that Tellum is having. And this is the reason why you just can't trust her as a character. But then of course, we end the episode with the discovery that Harry is in fact alive and is being tortured by Tellum Bond in the water. Now, another point on this episode is the whole journey of Hober Mallow and Brother Constant and the mission that they were set by Vault Harry. So it turns out that Hober Mallow is trying to strike a deal with the Spacers to sell them Opalisk, which is a synthetic mineral or micronutrient that the Spacers essentially depend upon. And this is after all the genetic alterations that Empire have made. Now, here's the catch. Empire gives them what they need, but in return, they expect 10% of the Spacers' offspring. So obviously, the Spacers provide that to Empire and their fleet. Now, Hober is actually offering much more Opalisk, but 0 offspring. So he's ultimately giving them what they want, which is the freedom. And all in return for Spacers to help them fight with Foundation, which of course we see in the final episode of this season. But of course, She Is Center offers Hober Mallow to the Empire, which then means Bell and Glaywin come on site for this, and we get a great scene. Now, of course, watching this first time round, you don't realise, but actually in the moment, about how Hober, knows what's going on. He's not very good at fighting, and he's actually just trying to get close enough to the door to release Becky. And this is Becky's moment. When she really gets into her power and almost kills Glaewin. And then, of course, Hober calls her back in the ship and they escape. And beyond both the Spacers and the fleet's expectations, Hober then jumps from the dock itself, which they thought was impossible. Now, I must mention here, that ship that jumped from the dock and blew all the people out of the way was just done to perfection. And I was mesmerised by the whole scene. It was just so kind of graceful and elegant the way it was done. It was mesmerising, and I've really got to give a shout out to the Foundation series and Apple TV, because when they do scenes like this, they do it well. Now we finally get a scene where Constant and Polly meet with Day. But due to her having dual brain scans that I must point out, I don't get why no one picked this up and questioned it even further. But Harry then projects himself through some kind of electrical biomatter and has a full conversation with Day. Now, of course, this is the left hand of Harry, as we discover in a couple of episodes. He's Vault Harry. He doesn't know the overall arching plan, but still has a conversation, and it turns out that Day also studied him when he was younger. But then he tells Harry that he's ending the genetic dynasty due to kind of preventing psychohistory from happening. And there's a saying here where they essentially say to Brother Constant that, or Harry should I say,
"What kind of a ghost is this man you follow, who keeps an elder in the dark and uses the body of a girl?"
Now the camera cuts to Demoiselle, which I think was about her and Cleon the First, meaning that he was the elder who was just using this body of a girl to do what he wants and trap her, similar to how Harry has done this to Constant in this particular moment. And there you go, guys, that was it. Now, I know this episode was a little bit out of order, but I really enjoyed it. It was very informative, and it's starting to put plans in motion. And of course, the next episode is episode 8, my ultimate favourite episode of the whole Foundation season 1 and 2. So expect that to be a little bit lengthier than these. But as always, guys, I'm hoping you're enjoying this. I've just dropped a Demoiselle journey video. So if you haven't already caught that, please do head over to the channel now and check it out, along with the one about the Cleons and Harry. But of course, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really does help the channel to grow. And we love talking about everything sci-fi and, of course, Foundation. So as always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time with something new.